Hemet City Council. Sarah, can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Rupa? Here. Councilmember Orange? Here. Chairperson Myers?
Here.
Mayor Percival?
Here. Up first is the invocation. It's going to be presented by Ann Gindra with the Hemet Seneceno Interfaith Council. If you could please rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Never checked in and I don't see them here, I'm sorry.
Okay. Jim Lineberger, you're a member of the Hemet Seneceno. If you could, that would be great. Thank you, sir. And then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Krupa.
Let us pray. Dear Father, we thank you for the gathering tonight. We thank you for bringing us all together. And the objective, Father, is to do what's best for this city. As we face many challenges, let us also remember the blessings that we have in this valley, the beauty, the people. So let's not always focus, dear Father, on the negative, but let's focus on what you're doing here. So we thank you for tonight. We thank you for all those gatherers who have a concern for the betterment of this valley and this city. And we ask this in your precious name. Amen.
Please join in the salute to our flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. All right. Up next, item 3 is the city attorney closed session report. Mr. City Attorney.
Mayor, the City Council did go into closed session. During the study session, we added an item of subsequent need. That item was discussed. We need some additional direction on that. That'll carry over to the end. We did not get to the public employee evaluation. That'll carry over to the end of your meeting tonight as well. Other than that, there's no reportable action at this time on those.
All right. Thank you very much. Up next, item 4 is a proclamation proclaiming September 2018 Library Card Sign-Up Month. And Kathy, I believe I'm giving this to you. All right, so I have this proclamation from the City of Hemet dated September 2018, whereas a library card is the most important school supply of all, and whereas libraries play an important role in the education and development of children, and library programs serve students of all ages from early literacy to homework help to, I think that says good. It may be, no, it may say God classes, and what does it say? Okay. Libraries empower all people to pursue their interests, discover their passions, and achieve their highest potential as learners and citizens, and librarians bring communities together, creating welcoming and inclusive spaces for students of all backgrounds to learn together, and libraries are consistently transforming and expanding their services to meet the needs of communities they serve. And libraries promote equity, making digital technology and information equally accessible to all. Therefore, I, Michael Percival, Mayor of the City of Hemet, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim September 2018 Library Card Sign-Up Month. And if you have a speech, we'd love to hear it.
A few words. One thing, I just want to thank you for recognizing Library Card Sign-Up Month. One of the things that the library is doing, we brought out a lot talking about students. I'm going to West Valley High School tomorrow to talk to the teachers before the kids get there, and we will be distributing 1,994 library cards to the students of West Valley to help them in their quest for knowledge. So thank you. It was just very timely, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And the other thing is, I know I haven't given some of you cards, so I have your cards here. So, if I may. Just come by, then activate it.
I get a new one?
Yeah, you can have one. Okay.
you very much. Thank you, thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Kathy. Okay, up next, I'm going to skip around real quick. The city manager has an announcement that he would like to.
Yes, we have hired a new HR manager, Alexia Hicks, and I would like for her to come up and introduce herself, not singular, to the council. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Alicia Hicks. I just want to let you know that I'm thankful to be here and have the opportunity to speak and to work for the City of Hemet as a Human Resources Manager. What I do bring is 20 years of experience in public sector. 18 of those years are directly with city government in human resources, working in a full-service city with over 1,100 employees, police, fire, just full service. And in a smaller spectrum, I also work for a smaller city with 59 employees. So I understand the verse of smaller organization versus a large organization. Again, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so moving along, the consent calendar. This is items that are typically routine in nature and are acted by one motion. Are there any members of the public who wishes to pull anything? Any staff wish to pull anything? Okay. Any of the council wish to pull anything? No? All right, that's a first. With that, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
All right, please vote. Okay, maybe it wasn't a first, but it's been a while. All right, that passes unanimous. Moving right along, we're making good progress here. Up next, communication from the public. Is there anybody here that wishes to address the council on any issues that are not on the agenda? Okay. Marie, welcome.
Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself, didn't I? Sorry, Marie. Don't move.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm here again to berate you. What is happening? What is the city's position? What are you doing to help stop that medium? I keep coming back and asking for a report. What's happening? What are you doing? How are you going to protect the small businesses that may be put out of business because of the construction and the traffic that construction of the medium may cause? Please do something, and if you do something, give us a report. Let the public know what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. There will be a report coming out with the city manager's reports later on in the agenda to give a report out on progress. Are there any other? Okay. All right. Moving along. Item 12. Turf conversion project rebates, Public Works Director Jensen.
Good evening again, Council. I am excited to bring you some good news about some rebate funding that we were able to get approved for the transition for a few of our parkway areas to remove turf and install drought-tolerant landscaping. Staff has been diligently working and looking for alternative funding for these type of projects. So when EMWD recently released 2 new rebate programs, we were probably the first in the first 10 emails saying we want in. So we were able to, through the hard work of Charles Russell, my superintendent, to get approved for $405,834 through 2 separate rebate programs. The first rebate program is the turf buyback program, where EMWD offers they offer $2 per square foot to remove non-functional turf and replace it with drought-tolerant landscape. And then the second rebate program is called the C2, which is the Commercial 2 Multifamily Drip Program, which provides 50 cents per square foot for the transition of spray irrigation to drip irrigation. Combining the rebate incentives for both programs, we've been able to identify 3 parkways that are within EMWD's water service area, which is a prerequisite of the rebate programs. It's a little over, I believe, 175,000 square feet of turf at 3 different locations that we'll be looking at. And if I can get this to run, I'll show you them quickly. So the first area, and these are in no particular order, is Seven Hills Drive. So the entrance to Seven Hills, there are 2 giant areas of turf that we are hoping to be able to, well, remove the turf and replace with drought-tolerant landscape. Is this going to work for me? Nope. The second area is, if you're familiar with the Crean Homes development, which is on the east side of Sanderson, in between Eaton and Commonwealth. So this is, again, one of our landscape maintenance districts, and the biggest turf area is going to be on the south side of the development on the Eaton side, where the entrance, kind of the main entrance to the area is. And then lastly, we are looking at what we affectionately know as Wildflower Track. It's another track on Sanderson that's just south of Crean Homes. So again, looking at the area on Sanderson, on that south side of Eaton. So those are kind of the 2 areas there. These are all landscape maintenance districts that we currently maintain. So we're hoping to get, obviously, some water cost savings in those areas. Like I said, they're all serviced by EMWD. The rebates are issued on a reimbursement basis, and we will phase the projects. So our intent is to start with Crean Homes, because that really has kind of the largest area, and we've had a lot of interaction with the HOA over there. So they've been involved in the process in terms of talking about what we want to do. After we complete that, we hope to kind of use that to point to for Seven Hills, as well as Wildflower, to show them what we're able to do. It is a limited amount of money. It's not a situation where we're going to go in and just flourish the place with drought-tolerant plants. So there's kind of got to be some strategic placement. So we really wanted to take Crean Homes and kind of make that the model. So tonight, we are requesting that council approve the acceptance of the rebates and establish expenditure budgets for us so that we can get the projects out to bid. They will be bid separately. Like I said, it will be phased. And we can get them constructed. We're kind of in that good time of year to do this in terms of plant survival as we enter into a cooler phase. And just know that staff is committed to working within the rebate amounts to ensure that the project costs don't exceed the available reimbursement from the rebates. So
That's a great idea. Are there any questions for staff?
I just have one question. Since these are existing landscape districts,
Yes.
will the cost to then maintain be prorated back to the residents who are paying into that landscape maintenance fund?
So part of the reason we picked the districts we did is because they are not, the assessments are not covering current maintenance.
Okay.
So in a couple of these areas, we only have every other week maintenance occurring right now. And in another, which happens to be the Seven Hills area, it's actually in our pre-218 district. So the assessments there were established in the 1980s. They have not increased since. So we're also really looking at cutting those costs down so that we're within getting into those maintenance pieces. However, in those cases where, you know, we take a look at every single district every year when we do the budget process, and we only assess for what we need. So absolutely, if there's enough savings that come from these and we're able to back those down, absolutely.
Did I just hear you say you're going to lower taxes?
I am not running, sir, so no,
That was
you
the
did not hear me
question.
say anything.
not running either, but I'm just putting that out there for the people that live in there that they may.
I am not
If you keep-
raising
if you keep the
anything.
cost.
Right, I'm sorry. I guess I was in a different place in my head when you said that, so.
Very good. Any other questions for staff?
Just similar lines that, well, first of all, thank you, Charles, for your work on that, and you, Chris, for putting it together. That's great work, and I know it was pretty labor intensive to do all of that. The question I have, you mentioned that with the drought tolerant, we're expecting to have some savings in water usage. And I think you partly answered where I was going with my question about anticipated reduction in labor associated with the maintenance of those areas.
So the labor cost itself does not change because a planter is a planter in terms of the cost of maintenance. But where we will see savings would be on that utility piece, on the cost of water. So, and turf takes a lot more water than point-to-point drip irrigation, specifically watering plant areas.
But if we had turf there, we're mowing it, right?
Correct.
So we're not going to need to mow.
Won't need to mow, but you will have weeding, and you will have spraying, and there are other things that kind of offset that. I know it's kind of it's hard to picture. I'm going to go there for myself, but think of a riding mower, and you're blowing through the turf versus hand weeding and going through and spraying and spot checking everything. So it's a different level of maintenance. It's not more costly. It's just a different type.
Okay. You answered my question.
Okay.
Thanks.
I do have a quick question, and that is, when you develop the plan, is the HOA ever consulted on what's going to be put in and how it's going to be maintained?
Absolutely. So Charles has actually been meeting with members of the Green Homes HOA right now because we knew that was going to be the first project, and I think that he's already been in contact with. I was just going to tell a story. He has not contacted Seven Hills yet, but yes, no, that's super important.
Yeah.
We want their buy-in, we want their ideas, and we want them to have a realistic understanding of what can be done with the dollars we get, because lots of times people want Kauai, and what we can do is a small island.
And let me ask you something. Can the HOA, if they want something that is still very drought tolerant, can they put their money in to make it happen?
Absolutely. I think that it's just a matter of what they want to contribute.
Okay.
Yeah.
And volunteer their people. I heard Bonnie say she wanted to volunteer. Very good. Carly, did you have any questions? Okay. So this isn't a discussion action item. I will open it up for public comment. If there's anybody that wishes to come speak on this project. All right, nobody rushing the microphone. Bring it back to council.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
All right. Please vote. All right, that passes unanimous. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chris.
council.
Okay, up next, Community Development Block Grant. Our acting CDBG coordinator, Rob.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. There are 4 items for your consideration tonight. Council approved the CDBG 2018-19 spending plan and subrecipients at the April 24th council meeting and held a public hearing which finalized the annual action plan. The next week, on May 1st, HUD sent a letter notifying the city of the final formula allocation approved by Congress of $871,070, an increase of $118,825 over the anticipated formula allocation of $752,245. Council reconvened the ad hoc committee at the June 26th City Council meeting to review the additional funds budgeted by Congress and to review the prior approved annual action spending plan and to bring their budget recommendations to the full council for consideration. These are the changes in the prior annual action plan approved on April 24th. The ad hoc committee recommends to reduce the funding of the City of Hemet administrative services from $176,093 to $116,000, to include CASA providing funding of $8,840 and state the planned activities in the annual action plan, to increase the funding of code enforcement from $180,000 to $264,347 to fund the additional activity of neighborhood cleanup, to increase the funding of Caravan Transit, Inc. from $15,000 to $18,341, to increase the funding of Valley Restart Shelter from $15,000 to $22,000, and to increase the funding of 1819 Missing Link Sidewalks and ADA Ramps from $145,000 to $229,350. According to the city's Citizen Participation Plan and HUD Regulation Title 24, Section 91.105, the ad hoc committee recommendations you are considering tonight triggered a substantial amendment due to the funding increases and decreases between activities and an added subrecipient, CASA, which is the Center Against Sexual Assault. If the substantial amendment and revised draft 1819 annual action plan are approved by council tonight, both documents will be available for public review and comment for 30 days, beginning October 1st, 2018, ending October 31st, 2018. The public hearing notice will be published October 1st, announcing the public hearing scheduled for November 13th, 2018. Are there any questions, comments?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I know that I'm sure the ad hoc committee has some comments they would like to add. Yes?
Well, it was somewhat of a refreshing task to undertake, to have more money available to distribute rather than have to take away something. And I have to say that all of the applicants are certainly worthy of consideration, and it's hard to put on a balance scale which agency is of greater value, but we really tried to take into consideration historical pictures of allocations that have been made in the past, and whether or not there were any new applicants, and try to give some, I guess, priority to the newer applicants in deference, when we had to make a decision and divide it up. But it's reassuring that we had that many applicants to choose from, and in some cases we even tried to see if we could introduce some that didn't quite make the application deadline, and found out that was not going to be an option available to us, so we even looked at that aspect of things as well. So, Bonnie?
I think what was the key is what would make the biggest impact on any given nonprofit, and not just nonprofit, but in our code enforcement, for example, we desperately needed more code enforcement dollars, and so we thought that was a very good area for this, to put it with regards to the city. And some of the others that we increased, Caravan, for an example, that was decreased from what they initially asked, and probably a little bit less than what they got last year. So we were really happy that we could increase that with this extra funding. So it wasn't an easy thing to do, because you really have to balance greatest impact, where the money would be of most benefit at this given time. So again, it was, as my colleague says, it was refreshing to be able to do that, and make a significant difference in some of these agencies.
And one of the ones that we were able to recommend an increase was the Valley Restart, because Valley Restart is going to be an intake center, so that we felt that was critical to be able to provide more funding for those endeavors.
Thank you. I want to point out that what's a huge plus for our community is having this funding, because last year there was talks that this program was going to go away. And so it's nice to know that we got the actual increase from what we anticipated that we were going to get. So it's good news. Thank you.
And I do want to thank you, Donna, because this was no easy task on your part to have to go back. It's a substantial workload in order to do this, and so greatly appreciate all your help on this.
Thanks again. So this is going to be it is a discussion item, so I will open it up at this time for comments. Anybody that wishes to comment? And we don't have anybody. Is there anybody that wants to comment on this? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to council. What do you want to do? All right.
I'll second.
Okay, please vote. All right, that passes unanimous. Thanks again. All right, up next, Public Works Equipment Purchase, Vector Truck Purchase. City Manager Parker.
This item came to the council in July. It was my recommendation to purchase a Vector truck in the amount of $487,000 plus, and another $72,000 of supplemental income appropriation, and to declare Unit 4606 95 Jetta truck as surplus. I was then asked after the meeting whether I was familiar with the item, and because I had my name on it to approve it. In all honesty, I had not an opportunity to evaluate the purchase. I thought it was just in the sense that it had already been approved by council, which was not necessarily the case. So I'm back here asking to rescind my recommendation and not purchase the truck at this time, and to give me an opportunity to assess its value in terms of all the needs of water, sewer, and storm drains. The impact of this would be the return of $487,000 to the wastewater and subvention funds. We have contacted the vendor. If we cancel the order now, we would not incur any expenses. Downside is they could not guarantee compliance with the January 2020 AQMD deadline if the purchase were reinstituted. So at this point, I'm asking that we rescind the purchase and give staff an opportunity to reevaluate it.
Are there any questions for staff?
When we approved this, I'm trying to remember the staff report at that time, was this as a secondary vehicle so that both crews could be out doing work at the same time, because we already have one truck that does qualify and will qualify in 2020?
I would point out that Chris is not in agreement with me on rescinding this at this particular time.
Can somebody answer that question?
She can answer that question.
We currently have a truck that qualifies for AQMD, is that correct? And this would be the second one.
Correct, and I think that there's a little bit of confusion with the January date. We actually have 2 combination unit trucks. We have 3 crews. So the 2 trucks that we have now that are combination Vector Jetter, and then we have 1 Jetter unit. So what ends up happening is our 2 sewer crews are able to use the combination units. Our storm drain crews get the Jetter truck. The Jetter truck pumps the stuff out of pipes, and then one of the guys from the other crews have to come get that. The vehicle that is dying that needs to go away is the Jetter truck, which means then we would have to
Replace it with a combination.
we would want to replace it with a combination unit, which would be more efficient for services. We have We just had the drainage work study that we did this morning, and we talked about, you asked the question about the grates that get, kind of mucked up with stuff. And the storm drain crew, effective January 2020, is going to be required. We have to put new trash grates in many of our inlet areas. So we're going to need the access to be able to maintain our storm drain system, as well as continue to meet the requirements of our sewer system in terms of maintaining it. We're supposed to be getting through it every couple of years. So the jetter truck, it's a 1995, was on its last leg. Recommendation was to purchase that third vehicle. It is a non-general fund purchase, just as a reminder from the old staff report, and it's something that we had saved up for many years in terms of the funds. But it would actually be a truck for the third crew.
Any other questions? Anyone? Seeing no more questions for staff, is there anybody that wishes to address this item? Seeing none, bring it back to council.
I will make a motion to approve city manager's recommendation.
Okay, and I will second that. Please vote. All right, that passes unanimous. Okay. Up next, item 15, Homeless Emergency Aid Program, City Attorney Bill.
Mayor and council members, the city manager asked that I put together a resolution declaring a shelter crisis for you to consider. This resolution would be necessary for you to access what are called HEAP funds. And there would be both positive and potentially negative implications of adopting such resolution. I'll go through this very quickly. I cannot claim to be the expert on HEAP funds. HEAP stands for Homeless Emergency Aid Program. These are funds that can be used to provide immediate emergency assistance to people experiencing homelessness. We, because we're a small city, have to access them through something called the Continuum of Care, which the County of Riverside functions as the main body for. HEAP is essentially like a block grant program, only authorized through the state, and there's $500 million that are allocated throughout the state for this purpose. In order to apply for and qualify for funds, the City Council has to adopt a resolution that contains all of the language required in Government Code Section 8698 and following, declaring a shelter crisis to exist within the city. Once you've done that, you become eligible to apply to the Continuum of Care and can obtain funds for homeless prevention activities, criminal justice diversion programs for homeless individuals with mental health needs, establishing or expanding services meeting the needs of homeless youth and youth at risk of homelessness, and emergency aid. As I understand the program, it is supposed to be fairly broad in its application to allow the city to craft its own ability to use the funds. That's all very positive. The potential negative is that on September 9th of this year, the Ninth Circuit rendered a decision in the case called Martin versus Boise, in which the city of Boise, which is in our Ninth Federal Circuit, if you're wondering why we're talking about a Boise case, invalidating and prohibiting the city of Boise from enforcing its anti-camping ordinance, because it could not show actual proof that there were not sufficient beds for the people camping on public property. As a result of that, Boise cannot enforce its anti-camping ordinance, which means it cannot remove people from camping on public property during the night and at other various times. There are some exceptions to that with blocking public access and things like that. The resolution that you're being required to adopt in order to access HEAP funds has two findings, has a number of findings, but two specifically. The first is that the city of Hemet finds that the number of homeless is significant, and these persons are without the ability to obtain shelter. The city of Hemet finds that the health and safety of unsheltered persons in the city of Hemet is threatened by lack of shelter. So this is likely to have two specific impacts on you. One, if you adopt this ordinance, you are declaring that there are not enough shelter beds for homeless people, which means you will not be able to enforce your anti-camping ordinance. Second, it probably, I say probably because the community development director and I have not looked at all of the potential scenarios in which a homeless shelter might move to town, but it probably means that our ability as a matter of discretion, deny a permit for a homeless shelter is negatively impacted. And so I can answer any questions if you have some. There are positive and negatives of the program and its application. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for staff?
Relating to this, I attended the last Continuum of Care meeting in Riverside, and the entire 2-hour meeting was on this item. In going through it, quite honestly, I saw only positives for doing it. However, towards the end, one of the questions that was raised, and actually it was raised by the representative from the city of Temecula who has a seat at that table, was indeed that question. What does this mean? Where is the ruling, whatever, of maybe an unwanted homeless shelter coming into your community? While it was not a legal opinion rendered, it was consensus of those people sitting around the table that a jurisdiction's planning department would still be superior to any type of new establishment coming in, and that it would then indeed have to be considered or approved by the Continuum of Care. So again, it was not a legal opinion rendered because the attorney for the Continuum of Care preferred not to render an opinion at that point. But there was just a lot of positives and a lot of discussion. I mean, it's a very good group. We have Valley Restart as a sitting member at the table, and used to have Chief Dave Brown as a member of that board. But I think, just like I said, I see positives attached to this in that if we don't, as a city, declare this emergency shelter program, none of the entities that are in the city limits of Hemet can apply for any of this funding. The County of Riverside did their emergency declaration only for the unincorporated areas of Riverside County, and each city jurisdiction has to do their own. And the fact that we have some very, very good entities in this town that do reach out to the homeless and do extremely good work, I would like to see us approve this. End of my soapbox.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, and I think too, being that we're at the crossroads of, trying to get a permanent solution to our homeless problem here in the community, we're going to need those extra funds to make that work. So without approving this declaration, that puts us out too many years to be able to fund what we think we'll need to fund. So we're going to have to deal with the negative however we have to deal with it, but there's a lot riding on this not to approve it.
Russ?
Yeah, I think that this is, kind of comes under the heading of a vote that we probably don't want to miss. And I think that there are concerns about it being a double-edged sword, and there could be some downside to it. I attended one of the sessions that I attended at the League of California Cities was on homeless issues and some different alternatives and creative ways that different cities are addressing the problem. And I think that to avail ourselves of looking at some of those alternative ways that other communities are addressing it, it'll be beneficial to be able to have the ability to pursue that, even though there are potential concerns from a risk management standpoint. I think that we have an obligation to continue to explore every reasonable, viable alternative to try to come up with some solutions. So, it makes sense to me to give it a shot.
Well, I think that us accepting this, we are having to publicly say that we have a problem, and we do have a problem. We're out on the streets, and we're trying to get people off, and it's not always easy to find homes for people. It's fine when I get a phone call, and it's a single man or a single woman, and that's easy. You know, you put them in your car, and I can find a place to take them. But, you know, you have a woman with one child, and I don't have a place to take them. We don't have a place. And I'm talking about the people that we have in our valley that are homeless. I think that accepting the problem and addressing it, taking this opportunity to get some funding, I look at all of the different agencies that we have in our valley, even My City Youth that deals with the teens right down there on Cockwitz and Latham. They could get money from this because we're trying to address the issues before they get to what we're dealing with in the chronic young people and then the chronic homeless. And so if we can prevent the chronic homelessness by stopping it at the gate, whether it's the different rental assistance or something to keep them from losing their place. You know, why should a car breaking down cause them to lose their job and then lose their home? These are real issues that we have every single day in our city. And these are problems that are causing homelessness. And if we can address it from this level, that'd be great. I would also like for our police chief to weigh in on this. Would you mind? You get to deal with it too on your level, so.
Good evening, Council. We have had some participation in the COC in the past. We have found that it's such a large group that sometimes it's frustrating to get some things done at the COC level. And since it's basically run by the county, we're just one of the small voices at the table. But we have had seats at the table before, and we probably, if we're going to get back into the funding and looking at HEAP, we probably should try to get a full-time spot at the table. My main concern right now with the homelessness is the specific case law that the city attorney mentioned that the Ninth Court of Appeal just ruled on in Boise. That does directly affect us here in the city of Hemet. Some of our specific municipal codes that we use to enforce sleeping in certain areas, sleeping in the library, sleeping on sidewalks and things like that are now going to be directly affected. So if we have to tie the HEAP funding to say we have beds, that may be a few years down the line, but if the Ninth Circuit is still going to continue to make those rulings that are going to make enforcement of those type of municipal codes difficult for us, I think that it's probably an important step that we need to look at.
So they have to sue us to be able to stay in their tents, or we get to tell them to move?
No, so with that, with the current ruling of this case, we are basically at null and void some of our municipal codes that we currently use, some of the tools that we use to say, hey, you can't be here, it's against the law. Well, currently now it's no longer against the law. So technically, anywhere in and the Ninth Circuit it's a large area, so it's the Western United States. So typically anywhere in that area that someone wants to camp or sleep in the park after dark. So those are some of the challenging issues for us. Our parks are technically closed at night, but if you look at this decision from the 9th, we can't really enforce that unless we say there are beds available, let's get you those beds. Then if someone says, no, I'm not going to those beds. The specific case was tied, in Boise, was tied to religious organizations. There were beds available, but they were at shelters that were run by religious churches and things like that. So the ACLU picked up the case and said you can't make them go to shelters that are run by religious organizations. They put basically the onus right back on the city and said you have to, or some government agency has to offer those beds. So that's where the challenge is going to be from law enforcement, is to try to have a balance. Some of the issues in Boise were it was very difficult for the Boise Police Department to even reach these shelters after hours to say, do you really have beds? Do you not have beds? So there's going to have to be a real change in the way we monitor and handle homelessness with people staying in public places. It's going to be a challenge, not just for us here in town, but for the entire state of California.
So if we're able to offer them beds, then they can't stay in the tent?
Technically, that's the ruling of the case, and I think Eric can expand on that. But yes, that there has to be beds for us to write a citation for it to be valid. And we have to have proof that that bed was available.
I think we can work that out.
Okay. I hope so, because it's going to be a real challenge for us.
Well, that's why we'll talk about these other ideas, but the homeless outreach team, we get people in beds all night long.
Perfect. And I think most of our homeless in town, with our rocks teams things, the folks that we run into every day know that there are options out there, and we will work hard. We will call you. We will call other organizations. And truly, there's ways of getting people off the street right now if they're really interested in doing that. So that's the challenge is now if they say, no, we don't want the help, there's no other recourse. We may have to leave them where they're at.
Because I like the no excuses. You know, I mean, there's no excuse for them to be out there when we're out there offering them places to stay.
Correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
Is that all you got? Okay. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Do you have any feedback from, we had somebody on Monday, I believe, or Tuesday in Marietta for a homeless meeting. Is there any feedback from that?
Yeah, so at the mayor's request, we sent some representatives down to the SRCAR meeting in Marietta. It was interesting, but specifically we met with the people that gave that presentation the week before in Temecula, so now we've had it a few times. Is what that focuses on in the Southwest corridor, some of the cities are basically now investing in a firm that's called CityNet, and CityNet basically brings in social workers for the cities. So it sounds like everyone in these cities is very frustrated that all the social workers are in their cubicles in Riverside instead of out here in the field with the people who are dealing with the homeless issues. So we're going to do some follow-up. We're going to contact some of the folks. Orange County has been using CityNet for a long time. So it's ironic because Orange County has a huge homeless problem. So I'm not sure how effective the whole thing is, but some of the organizations that are in the Southwest region seem to be very happy with the situation. So, but what that really does is it brings them to a central location, and it offers them specific services and has a caseworker there that can monitor and assist that person. Takes away the excuses.
Right. And before we get into that, we have a group of volunteers, and we've got all these people out here right now that have places in the valley that find beds for people.
Yeah, and I think the key is with what they're trying to do is it's a one-stop shop. So they have somewhere for these people to go rather than us making calls at midnight or whatever. We say, hey, here's where this happens at. So it's bringing all those resources into the same tent. That's basically what it is. To use that. Right.
Yeah, you got you. All right, I'll give you the information.
Thank you.
And thank you for sending somebody out there, because then it lets Temecula Marietta know that we're paying attention to what's going on regionally.
Sure, and we're hearing the same things regionally. Everyone's having the same problems. Everyone's complaining about the white vans that are dropping people off everywhere. It's all the same issues. The one thing I do know is that our officers that are dealing with the homeless folks that are choosing to continue to break laws, we know we're being affected because we're hearing from other cities around us that, hey, we're seeing a lot of homeless people from Hemet. So, if they're not going to, and we tell them that, if you want the help, we'll give you the help. If you're going to continue to break the law, then you're going to have to deal with us that way. So we think what we're doing is effective. We just obviously could use more resources at the table.
Perfect. Thank you. I have a couple questions for the city attorney. So this was a Ninth Circuit case. I read most of the opinion that came out of the court. Is the city of Boise going to be appealing this to the Supreme Court? And if they do you think they've got a good chance of getting in front of the court?
I don't know if they're planning on seeking review by the Supreme Court or not. They still have a little time to do that. I have no idea. The Ninth Circuit case in Boise was directly relied on a 2006 case from the Ninth Circuit that has not been reviewed or overturned. So I don't know if the court's going to view this as a conflict of law with the other jurisdictions. It seems to be consistent with Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal rulings. So we'll see. Well, I can follow up and see if they're going to.
If it does go to the Supreme Court, I think the Ninth Circuit is not very successful at getting their cases not overturned because
cost their fingers.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Okay, one more question.
One more.
One more.
Okay, I have another question for you, for the city attorney. If you could explain on the one that says the city of Hemet finds that the number of homeless is significant and these persons are without the ability to obtain shelter. Can you define that for me, the ability to obtain shelter?
No, because that's what the statute said. It came out
That's
of the
just
law.
what it
Yeah,
means.
and that we're just finding that they're not able to obtain shelter.
So that doesn't mean that we don't have shelter.
It doesn't mean that you don't have shelters, but there's people who aren't able to find the shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Or get to it for whatever reason they want.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right. So this is a discussion item. Are there any people out there that would like to address this item?
Your first speaker is Susan Larkin, and she'll be followed by Jim Lamberger.
Susan, welcome.
Thank you very much. I have to say, first off, thank you very much from Valley Restart's heart to yours that you have granted us some additional funding. I'm going to try and talk really fast because I wrote a whole speech and then I have some extra little notes. Okay, so good evening. Thank you for listening to me. My name is Susan Larkin. I am the Grant Administrator for Valley Restart Shelter here in Hemet. I am also a board member on the Continuum of Care, which funnels money for homeless people throughout the county. But more importantly, I am a homeowner in this valley. I'm here to encourage this council to vote yes to declaring a shelter emergency in this city. I have heard this and other councils in the past express their concern on our homeless issue and want to address it. Often that is followed by where do we get the money. Just last year was the first time the council had supported Valley Restart through CDBG funds. I believe this council, its city, and its citizens are ready to tackle this issue. I understand most citizens are concerned about the number of homeless they see every day, and some may even say providing services will bring more here. I am here to tell you that they are already here. Most of these people are here because they lived, worked, or have close connections here to family and friends. Valley Restart provides shelter and services on an average of to 350 people a year. That sounds really good. We did a great job, but this is the thing. We also have probably the exact same amount, 350 or more, that we can't provide services for because we are small, we are limited in funds, and these funds would make a difference. I feel like we're only treading water at this point. We're not making a big difference because we don't have the money. We're preventing more, but then, there's still people on the streets. This is the approximate money that would be available to Riverside County is $10 million. That's a lot of money. We have the opportunity to access that funding with this declaration. The city, Community Pantry, Project Hope, CASA, the My City Youth, and others may be able to use this money to make a dent in this problem. Valley Restart's outreach team, funded by the CDBG program, has helped over 10 people get off the streets and get housed, 5 people in the last couple of weeks. And we are working with many, many more. So we probably work with 100, and then they don't just get housed, but they get services to help issues such as mental health, substance abuse, medical issues, family issues. I know that Project Hope has the same type of success. Nationally, over 70% of lower-income households were rent-burdened, paying more than 30 or even 50% of their income on rent. In a recent Federal Reserve report on U.S. economic well-being, 46% of adults reported they cannot cover an emergency expense of $400. This money can help reduce homelessness on the streets, but it can also help keep people from losing their housing. It can help pay for rent in a financial emergency, keep the utilities on, provide transportation to work when a car breaks down, maybe even help with the repairs. It can help pay uncovered medical costs, provide work uniforms and clothing like work boots. It can help put food on the table. This funding will not be a quick fix, but it can be a jump start. Our community needs to be able to access these funds, and our community deserves to be able to access these funds. Please vote yes to declare emergency so our community can address these issues. I know it's blinking, but I have a couple of responses to the Ninth Circuit Court opinion. I do not believe that shelters will want to rush into this area because this is only 2-year funding. Everything has to be done by 2021. I don't think that realistically anybody could come in and say, hey, I'm going to build a shelter in the small industrial area that, you know, Valley Restart is already located in with these funds. I just don't think it's possible. So I think that while that's a concern, it's not a high concern. Just as a side note to My City Youth, I know. There is a percentage set aside for youth. So thank you very much for your listening and your patience and the couple extra minutes that I got. Thank you very much.
She took your time, Jim. You can. No, I'm just kidding.
Hope she didn't take any of my time away from me.
No, you didn't hear me. I said, yeah, she took
Hi
your
there,
time.
Jim Langberger with the Community Pantry. I just learned about this not too long ago. I haven't done a lot of education on it. But I always hear rumors. Facebook, just scuttlebutt is the word I'm going to use. We have the business owners, the long-term residents say every time you bring resources, it brings more homeless. I've heard this. I've heard the Pantry, Salvation Army, and Valley Restart is the reason for the homeless. We got to get off of that old myth. I've shared with council before, my adopted mother was raised and born in Hemet. She's 84 years old, and they had homeless back then. At this level, no. They had drug addicts back then. At this level, no. So let's get rid of the BS and the myth, because that's not true. With that, we also have to be stewards with our money. We have to be able to house people, but make sure they stay housed. So we have to be very precise on who we're going to help, not just the homeless on the streets, but I've shared before with the grant I got last year with the CDBG, we are housing women who have come in with their spouse dying, becoming homeless. I'm not saying forget about those on the streets, but we have to find the few select that can sustain. We have to look at the homeless seniors, and in my opinion, that comes first. Then we have to understand, if we don't do nothing, how's it working for us now? That's my question in anything. How's it working? It ain't. I no longer support homeless with housing, not because I don't have a passion. I've got 30 years doing this. It's I don't have funds and I have to be selective. So my choice for my agency is seniors and single mothers. And if I have funds, then I help the homeless. So we need to either, whether it's an ad hoc committee or something, we need to come up with a plan. We need to take these funds. We have to do something. Now, for you, Eric, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or if this Circuit 9, are you familiar with the Arlupa Act of 2000? that could be based off of that because that our LUPA covers a lot of this stuff. It is given the rights of homeless to stay